right, we are going live.
So several of the things aren't, so
How you
I'm just
moving?
looking at. I want to ask you, I don't think I'm gonna go since we have the grant.
Yeah, so you figured it out the rest of
I
it.
just like saying that I'm not.
Yeah, I said, one settlement date for tomorrow, so I'll see what comes.
Well, I made sure that some of the other superintendents.
So I'm hopeful, Mac.
It's not going to unless nobody else was.
I asked for 61 grand. So that was the half split that we've done so far.
First stuff we did.
So usually you do it quarterly, so I don't think we'll bring you in this year.
I think we're.
But it'll just come in next year after it's been. Hello there.
Hello. Okay. Hey, Randy. All right. Thank you.
This was the Donald. I keep forgetting this thing. Signature to Donald. It's saying here, Doreen. She don't need to pull the gum out because George is off the tape.
On those resolutions. Well, I can just get it tonight. No, I got it.
Oh, you have copies of them? Okay,
The one, she has to submit tomorrow,
okay,
which is the one.
okay.
So I decided to get all three. Usually I don't like robbing you after the meeting.
That's fine.
Yeah.
If I know you need them, I will have them with me.
I got copies.
Okay.
How's it feel?
And I'm a big winner.
Well, now, if you ever start missing us, you save a chair here. Put your name, put your little name card, so.
Okay, I'll keep it.
I don't think you're sincere. So how are you feeling? good. Yes, it is.
Hello.
Hey, Dr. Melise Berry.
Hey, Barry.
Hey, so you got you on speakerphone now.
Okay, thank you.
I know, I did the same.
I was like, I got my seat.
Webinar or whatever from this morning. Did you find out anything specific?
Well, yes, Randy and I both were on it. He actually, I had to get off to do a staffing meeting, but 30 days was already took.
They say you should do what you usually do, but if you actually post your plan, that's what you're coming to, your house, it doesn't have to be.
Okay, so I should not say.
So the night,
Just got some information today.
the second part,
I'm gonna check on everyone that's still standing and making sure.
has to be a little more. You have to engage and solicit and kind of talk through and get information. You can't just put your plan out there and ask for public comment. So in 90 days, we will be doing something, it's just, is it separate?
Basically, we just got information today.
Yes.
We'll be
But there will be an opportunity.
providing.
Yes, there will be.
Should have gone up there and right through. Because it's so engaging. I want 3 phones too.
Yes, I thought I was gonna have space tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm approving your POs.
Are you?
Well, I approved half of them.
Okay.
We're gonna talk about the other ones.
Listen, you told me to spend money and I thought I
Well,
did.
and I did.
I don't know why you picking on me.
I approved half of them. The other ones are gonna have to go to these kids, and it's gonna wait.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order this May meeting of the Bedford County School Board. Ms. Johnson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mrs. Kirby?
Here.
Mrs. Harrison?
Here.
Dr. Hicks?
Here.
Mr. Hill?
Here.
Mr. Leamy?
Here.
Dr. Mealy?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you, ma'am. Do we have a motion to allow a board member to participate remotely in tonight's meeting in accordance with BCPS policy BDD?
So moved.
So we have a motion by Mr. Leamy, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Hicks, any discussion? Hearing none, call for vote, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Dr. Mealy, officially welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
We're sorry you can't be here with us tonight, but we're glad you can still participate. And if at any point we forget about you, please yell and let me know, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve tonight's agenda as presented.
All right, so we have a motion by Dr. Hicks. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hairston. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The agenda is approved unanimously. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into closed session pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A1, to discuss the assignment, appointment, performance, discipline, and release of contract for specific school board employees, and pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A3, for discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or for the disposition of publicly held real estate where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body.
Okay, so we have a motion to go into closed session by Ms. Kirby. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hairston. Discussion, otherwise, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, we are now in closed session. Good. Okay. All right. Now we're all back together. Do we have a motion to come out of closed meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move we come out of closed meeting.
All right, so we have a motion to come out of closed meeting by Ms. Kirby. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lee. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Alright, so we are back in open session now. Ms. Johnson, would you please certify the closed meeting?
Excuse me. Whereas the Bedford County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Bedford County School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Yes.
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 Dr. Neely?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
As much as we have no action from tonight's closed meeting, let's move into staff report. So school year 21-22 planning update. Dr. Woodford.
Good evening, board members. It's really hard to believe that we only have 11 days left in one of the most challenging years of my educational experience. And I know that many of you have had the opportunity to express your thanks, but on behalf of the instruction team and myself, we just want to thank all of our staff members that have made this year successful. What started as an overwhelming challenge has ended with our school division being one of the few in this region to offer in-person learning all year long, which is due to the diligence and commitment of our employees. And I just really want them to know that we all here at the school board office also appreciate them. As you know, we sent out a request for virtual learning and received requests back from parents in April. We then made acceptance decisions based on student performance in virtual learning last year, their attendance, whether they had good attendance or not, and their success with virtual learning. And so at this time, we have a total of 271 students that have been accepted to virtual learning. 73 of them are K-5 students, 84 are in grades 6 through 8, and 114 are high schoolers. Based on the low number of students at each grade level, we determined that it was most cost-effective to use Virtual Virginia for our virtual learning platform. While we know our virtual teachers did an outstanding job this past year, and that this decision, I want them to know, is no reflection of the work and the hard effort that they did. But if we were to continue with the model that we used this year, our teachers would have had to be teaching multiple grade levels, and we would have been unable to offer a lot of our options for instruction at the high school level that Virtual Virginia is able to offer. Virtual Virginia does require synchronous instruction online throughout the day for students. We will have mentors or learning coaches that will serve as support for those students as they work virtually, but all of their instruction will occur with Virtual Virginia staff. For students in grades K through 5, we'll pay tuition of $1,325 per semester, and for grades 6 through 12, it is $250 per credit. Also, I just want you to know that Dr. Calvert and I have been working with the principals and Dr. Connor and Mr. Hagler to finalize staff locations for next year. The simplest way to explain this process, because it's very complicated, it's like a ball of yarn that the cats have been playing with all year and it's all tied up. Basically, we're putting everybody back where they started at the beginning of the school year before we started making changes based on where our students were. And then we are working with principals to do what we normally do with staff changes. We're looking at enrollment, we're looking at our kindergarten registration to see if we've got the correct staffing numbers at the schools. We're working really hard. You know, we do have staff that we are gonna retain using our CARES, or often referred to as ESSER money. And we'll assign those teachers during the summer as our summer enrollment numbers start to get more solid. We have our rollover July 1st, and then we will be able to see our kindergarten students live who are registering. And we'll be able to see which students have been re-enrolling and so are live in Power School. So that gives us a really good idea of actual students on campus. And so the good news about that is we do have this group of temporary staff who will get jobs in the summer. They won't know where they're going to be right now. We also did hire some temporary staff during the school year, late after the school year started. And I want you to know they are not going to get contracts right away, but they are on our list to offer contracts to first if we have job openings, if we have resignations. And so just in case you get any questions about that, and Mr. Hagler, Dr. Calvert, and I can explain a little bit more if you have some questions. We do look forward to more information from the governor regarding the use of masks and the availability of vaccines for children ages 12 and up. And also, I understand there's some CDC guideline updates today that may be very encouraging. And so as VDH and CDC guidance is updated, we'll make updates to our health plan and our school return plan. And any of those changes that occur, we'll begin to initiate those during our summer school programs. We will continue throughout the summer to plan for in-person instruction for all students 5 days a week, returning to normal school hours. Students at the high school will be moving between classes to receive face-to-face instruction from their teachers, and elementary students will have their normal rotations of related arts classes. We still plan to create ways to do this safely with any mitigation strategies we might need as we receive more guidance from the Department of Health and the VDOE. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any for me.
That's in the R and
I do have a
Get that.
question, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Dr. Mealy, first out of the gate. Yes, ma'am.
If I understood you correctly, Dr. Woodford, you said that everyone, would go back where they started. So my question is, I know we had several teachers who, I'm just gonna take a poll off at Goodview, started at Goodview and then decided that they really just couldn't do this and actually left employment of BCPS. So if they come back, will they go back to their job or will it go to the person who we hired to take their place?
That's a good question. So it goes to the person who took that person's place, who was hired in that job. Anybody who left, let's say we had someone resign a couple of months into teaching virtually, they were overwhelmed, and then after a little while decided to come back to us, they moved down on that seniority list. So no ma'am, they don't return. It's basically who we started with, and then if someone resigned and we replaced them, then that person is in that new job, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes, I was just, wondering about that. I've already gotten some, inquiries as to that, so thank you for that. And, I just as a comment, I know everyone's probably thrilled to hear that we'll be back face to face and that, school will look much more normal than it has in the last, year or so. So, thank you for all your work with that.
Thank you.
Ms. Hairston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Woodford, just a question regarding the virtual platform. You mentioned that the students would have mentors. So can you elaborate on who are the mentors?
So So it depends a little bit at which level. Our goal is to look at some of our additional staff that we actually have, and some of our staff who actually were in our virtual school. And possibly have, and I'm saying possibly, so don't hold me to this, but the thought is either they connect with someone close at the school, a counselor or a teacher. Like, for instance, some of our small schools have maybe one child in our virtual. So trying to keep them connected to their base school is really important. But for instance, at the high school, we have much larger numbers. So we're thinking about a learning coach mentor with some of this additional staff that we're already paying, and have them kind of be the contact person to check attendance, to reach out to the family, to be the person who talks to those virtual Virginia teachers to make sure that student stays on board. And they'll have multiple students. It'll be like a large group of students in those larger schools. So we're trying to look at that as we're working on contracts and staffing, making sure we have the right people there. But we definitely want our kids to stay connected to their base schools, someone who'll make sure they're getting announcements from their school about, when sports tryouts are, or, how they can sign up and participate in dances or games or stuff like that. So it's really about keeping that connection. So I will have an update on that once we kind of move through contracts and see who we have out there. But there'll be people that I feel are dedicated to those students.
Okay, and they could possibly be teachers or staff that have worked with these students?
It could be, or so for instance, at the elementary level, some of our small schools have 1 or 2 students, and so we might put them with someone at their school, or we might just have an elementary person that works with the whole group and kind of keeps them connected. We're just trying to see what makes the most sense. But it probably will be a teacher who's had experience and does very well with Canvas. That's typically a lot of the problems, like parents maneuvering through Canvas, students using that platform. So our virtual teachers who were in Bedford Connects just know that so well.
Okay.
And so we've asked them if they're interested, and so we're just kind of sorting through all of that.
Okay, all right. I do have one other question.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? Just kind of thinking about alt ed.
Yes, ma'am.
And any changes there?
So right now we are continuing on as we had set in our plan.
Okay.
So Ms. Peastrack and her smaller staff is still at Alt Ed to work with students there.
Okay.
We did pull 2 of her teachers over to be learning coaches,
Okay.
and part of their work as learning coaches is that they're also certified in history and science, which is really important to have a teacher of record in those subjects for students in Alt Ed. So those students, those 2 teachers, we already kind of designated to do that. So we'll put more high schoolers who are in this virtual Virginia platform working with more students. So we didn't really change anything there, even though we moved over to virtual Virginia. We're still leaving that intact, and for any students, we have a small group who may start the year there. We've worked really hard to get our alternatives to suspension programs up and running. Mrs. Robertson has been working with the high schools and middle schools on that. We're starting to get some of that staff hired for IDS, and so we're going to still keep that support at Alt Ed, kind of partially also helping virtual Virginia. So
Okay. One last question. You mentioned the staffing, and you talked about temporary staff.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm just kind of curious. Those temporary staff members, what were their positions?
Okay, and I'm glad you asked this question. I can maybe explain it a little bit better. So, about November, I'd say, I think it was about November, we realized we needed a little bit more support at our school levels. We had a lot of kids going back and forth. And so we had gotten our first round of CARES, and so we wrote into our CARES that we would use that money to support more staff in the school. So we hire teachers November, December, January. Dr. Calvert's team worked and we did some recruiting, working with colleges to bring some of our student teachers on. And we offered them what we called a per diem contract, where we said, we can only promise you a job through the end of the year. And so that's who we consider temporary. People that came to us during that time, we gave a temporary contract to just till the end of the year, with the understanding that as we had positions opening, we would consider them first for those positions.
Okay.
So that's that temporary staff. And Dr. Calvert, how many are there? Just a rough number.
I would say 12 or 13.
Yeah, 12 or 13 that are on our temporary
One
list.
place to almost every elementary school.
Okay, that was gonna be my next questions in terms of just what population, are we looking primarily at high school or these temporary
They were
individuals?
mostly placed at elementary.
At elementary,
Mhm.
okay,
To give more hands-on in the classroom. That's where we had most of our kids returning from in-person.
okay.
So that's where we put most of our temporary staff. And so and again, we were transparent with them about it was till the end of the year, but we found some really great teachers.
Yeah,
So we
sure.
want to keep them if we can.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question.
All right, hang on, so Mr. Leamy was next.
Yeah, Dr. Woodford, this is just more of a curiosity question on my part. If you don't have it in front of you, that's fine, you can just shoot an email.
Okay.
Of the virtual 271 students that are going with the virtual option, how did that shake out in terms of by high school zone? I'm just trying to look at it from a broadband availability standpoint.
I can look that up during the meeting and I can either tell everyone or I can shoot you all an email with a breakdown.
Okay, whatever works best for you.
I can do that. I can calculate it and send it to all of you.
Okay, good deal.
All right, so Ms. Kirby, then Dr.
What
Mealy.
about Dr. Mealy?
Oh, Dr. Mealy, Ms. Kirby, and then Mr. Hill. All right, so Dr. Mealy, yes, ma'am.
Okay, Dr. Woodford, you had said that there were going to be, individuals who would, ensure that students remain connected to their home schools, and I agree that's really important. Who's gonna supervise these individuals to ensure that the students do in fact remain connected and receive the information, that they're supposed to receive? And what I'm concerned about is who's gonna do it and how are we gonna ensure continuity, like, if there are, like, I think you mentioned, like, tryouts, who's sending that information out and then ensuring that that's gonna be delivered?
So I have thoughts about that, but I have not run that through the team or through Dr. Bergen. So can I save that for a June meeting update?
Yes.
I don't want to surprise anybody in the public.
Those surprises are always the best, though.
I'm so sorry.
Ms. Kirby.
I got a couple of questions and they're kind of random, as I always am. How will the virtual students, and you said that they'll be closely monitored, what are their parameters to where they can stay virtual? And then if they cross those parameters, will they be mandated to go back to the classroom?
So in the agreement that I shared with you, I think a couple of months ago, we had that agreement between parents and students and the school division, that if students started to have truancy issues where they started to have multiple absences, if their grades went down, if they were struggling with the platform, that we would bring them back to in-person. We asked for a commitment of a semester, but honestly, if anyone's struggling, we'll bring them back in person as soon as we can get them back into the schools, and we feel like we'll have enough staff to do that. I will say I have, myself and the instruction team has met with Virtual Virginia, and I've been on weekly meetings with them, and they have very strict systems in place to monitor attendance, to notify the contact person for Virtual Virginia, to stay in touch with mentors. So they have thought through a lot of that and plan to really have a strong relationship with any school division using them and the platform. So there are some systems in place, but we're gonna monitor attendance and grades are the two things we're mostly worried about.
Now, when you talked about grades, you said when they're gonna monitor for when grades go down. Well, what are you using as the standard of measure from where they're going down? I mean,
Well,
to some kids, a C is great, and
Right,
some
right.
it's
I think it'll depend on our conversation with a teacher in virtual Virginia, because sometimes a student's grades may go up and down, just naturally if they're not understanding content. I think where we would be mostly concerned is if the student wasn't signing on. One of the requirements for virtual Virginia, at least for the youngest students, high school's a little different. The youngest is they have to have their camera on the entire time, and they have to be online with the teacher during instruction. So if they miss, they have to have a doctor's note to miss that instruction. So if we're seeing they're missing multiple days, so it's a truancy issue, and they're not turning in work, they're not reaching out to the teacher for one-on-one, our mentors are working with them, and it's kind of like just in the classroom. You kind of know as a teacher if that student's going to be able to recover or if they're just getting so far behind. So I think it's really an individual based on how the teacher at Virtual Virginia and the mentor and the parent and the student, they'll all be communicating together about that. And we also have historic grades and historic performance, and we can kind of see, is this kind of typically how the student performs? So there's no magic cutoff, because I think if we do a magic cutoff, then we are not taking individual needs into consideration. But there'll just be a lot of watching and communicating about what's okay and what's not.
Another question, you mentioned about the various teachers getting their contracts, and you're probably gonna be off the hook on this one. When are the teachers and everyone expected to get their contracts?
I'll speak to that. We did send an email out to teachers. We anticipated getting it out this week. But Dr. Woodford and her team have been meeting with every single principal, working through their staffing, and that finished up today. We anticipate probably Tuesday or Wednesday contracts will go out to all employees. It will say to be determined. We communicated that to the employees. We're focused on getting the numbers right. Here's your contract for the amount. The to be determined is that there is a lot of movement back into the buildings. But because enrollment's going down doesn't mean that everybody can stay there, so we're gonna have to pull some out, but our budget will support those as additional staff because of the additional CARES Act money that we have available. All the resource teachers we're getting all that realigned and resetting. It is a complicated process. So we anticipate probably by Tuesday, Wednesday, contracts will go out through Talent Ed to all employees with to be determined on every single contract. And hopefully by the end of May, first week of June, we'll communicate out to everybody we can where your assignment is for next year. There might still be a few that we're gonna say to be determined, because we have a pool maybe of teachers that we'll put where there's a need that we're using CARES Act money for to support higher levels of staffing than we normally would. Because in the budget, we set aside some of the CARES Act money to maintain staffing where we are right now, even though we were going down in enrollment to transition back into in-person. So that's gonna be a big help to schools. We just don't know where that's needed until we see the enrollment numbers and actually what starts happening in the summer. So a lot of complicated things going out, but if teachers are listening, probably Tuesday or Wednesday night is our target to get contracts out. I have probably 99% of the file built. A little bit of checking over tomorrow, and then we'll get it loaded up into Talent Ed to go out next week.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
And then one last one, for now. You said that for the middle school and high school, it's $250 a credit hour for tuition. About how many credit hours are we looking at?
So that would be about 6 to 7 classes, depending on the student, depending on the grade level. Some of our seniors may only need a couple of classes for graduation, or, so they charge by the class,
Okay, so but roughly for the middle school students, you're looking at $1,500?
something like that, yeah.
Okay, that's all for now.
Okay.
Mr. Hill?
So talking along those dollars, so $13.25 a semester for K through 5, approximately 1,500 for 6 through 12. Who's paying that?
So the agreement with Virtual Virginia is they're still our students, so we still get state ADM money for them. And so we'll use our state ADM money to pay that tuition, and we'll actually get more money from the state in that per student allotment than we're paying to Virtual Virginia. Does that make sense?
Let me just add, long-term, if this continues long-term, we'll have to readjust, but probably in the initial year, we may use some of the CARES Act money to pay for that. Because if you have more kids going to Virtual Virginia, then you don't need as many in-classroom teachers. We're gonna have to readjust staffing that will pay for that. So if you go down in staffing, that'll be savings to actually pay Virtual Virginia for that, as you're getting state money.
So where I'm getting to, are we doing that for every student?
Well, for every student, I mean, we
Bedford
pay for
County.
their teacher
Well,
in the classroom.
what I'm asking is, so we're gonna pay this, correct, for these students, these 271 students. Even though we're getting state money,
Yes,
we're going to then pay for these classes because these students have chosen to go virtual.
Well, we would have paid for their teacher in virtual, or we would have paid tuition, because we still have this virtual, I mean, we're still offering a virtual option at least for one more year. And so, I mean, it's, the difference in, for instance, we have, I think, 2 kindergartners. So the question is, do you pay a teacher with benefits and everything, you know, $85,000 for those 2 students, or do you pay tuition and?
Yeah, and I understand all that. So these 271 students virtual, we're paying.
Mm-hmm.
Gov School, do we pay a certain amount per seat for Gov School? I think that's a yes, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to get back to, we have students who are dual enrolled, who are at CVCC. We don't pay that. So my question is, why are we treating students differently?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question, because we, as an instruction team, have actually talked about that, and talked about the fact that we probably need to be assisting those students a little bit more, and probably putting it in an action plan and thinking about budgeting for that. Because, as you know, lots of things kind of come to light as you are working through things like this. And I think that the other thing, if we start doing that, it'll probably affect the staffing on campus, because high schools get staffing for every student, even if they're not on campus. And so we would have to start adjusting. So we're taking that ADM money and putting it towards early college. And I would just say, I agree, you have a good point, and we have thought about it to put in a plan for the future, for sure.
I'll be interested in that plan, because we should not be treating students differently. I mean, everybody should be treated the same. That's what we hear around this table all the time. So I want to put that plug out there. Second question. We've got 12 or 13 temp that we're hoping to have positions for, but we're kind of waiting. I'd like to understand the risk of us not offering those contracts up front, of retaining those employees, because as we all know, there's other counties waiting to say, here's your contract. So question 1 would be, what are the risks? 2, is there a way for us to utilize some of that CARES Act funding? I'm sure you guys have already thought about this, but I'm throwing it out there to say I would support it, to go ahead and offer those 12 to 13 contracts to retain those folks based on what I'm seeing on retirements, resignations, et cetera.
I think one thing that is going to be very helpful next Wednesday, Virtual Virginia is going to make their first wave of hires. And a lot of our teachers have applied for those jobs and interviewed. And I will say, we have been told by Virtual Virginia staff that Bedford County has some of the strongest virtual teachers and interviews. So I have a feeling we might be not getting some contracts back next week. So that's why we're kind of hoping it'll kind of roll out, and so we'll be able to offer contracts quickly. But we have thought about all of those things, because we do have some good candidates. So I think things will start shifting again next week when contracts go out. We kind of start seeing those things happen. And I'm speaking for HR, and I'm sorry.
Dr. Connor, I think as we see resignations and retirements come through in the next week or two, especially with contracts not being returned and people kind of making those decisions, I think it would, Dr. Calvert, I think we'd turn around very quickly and probably be hiring most of these
I
back.
want the message to those folks to be, we want you.
Yes.
You're not an afterthought. I mean, so I would much rather be proactive in retaining those employees versus saying, we hope we have something for you. I mean, just being an employee, that's, the message matters.
Yes,
So
it does.
I was just going to encourage if we could use those dollars, let's use them and go forward. But again, not trying to run your business, I just wanted to throw that out there to say I would absolutely support it. So, that's all I have.
I have a couple of questions. So I do have to just echo everything you said when you think about all the obstacles that we had to overcome to maintain in-person learning opportunities all year. Many of our friends in Northern Virginia are just finally getting back in their school buildings now, and we are just about to finish up a full year of it with only minimal interruptions at 2 schools, I believe, this year. And so considering everything, that is incredibly impressive. So good work to everyone involved with making that happen. Now, one thing that I have heard a lot of positive comments on involve the learning coaches and some of the soft skills that they have helped to teach students, whether it's time management skills that I know college students are sorely lacking in. So this is going to be great preparation for our students that choose to go on to college. And then also helping our students reflect on themselves as learners and like what learning style works for me, how do I study better, more effectively for me or for this particular subject. Have we given any thought within the limited amount of flexibility Richmond is giving us for next year about maintaining that aspect of the learning coach program, whether that's a revamping of homeroom or something like that?
Actually, yes, all 3 high school principals have considered that. And they want to move away from the idea of homeroom because that's first thing in the morning. And so if I want to get a few extra minutes of sleep, I might just come in for first period. So they're looking at ways to incorporate that possibly within the day, maybe around lunch and remedial time. Definitely not at the level that it was this year, just because there isn't a waiver next year for clock hours and time. You have to be face-to-face with your teacher. So I think they're trying to get creative with schedules, even if it's connecting with learning coaches, 2 times a week or someone to kind of be that person's connection. We heard from students that was important to them. And I think that the teachers actually really enjoyed those connections that they made. So they're all looking and working with their staff to see what they're going to keep and how they can work it in the schedule.
Okay, that's great. And then do we have any updates as to what transportation might look like for next year? I know there were some questions surrounding that last time we met.
Well, what we're planning on doing in the summer with the current guidance is to do 2 kids per seat, basically.
Every seat?
Doubling what we've done this year, which has been 1 kid per seat. Still masking, still keeping windows open whenever we can, hand sanitizer and all of that, cleaning buses between runs. That's what our plan for summer is. I could envision that same thing being in place for the fall. However, if the governor's order changes and CDC and VDH guidance changes, we may be able to go much, go beyond that to get more kids on those buses as we need to. I mean, typically at a secondary level, that's all we had on buses anyway. But there were some elementary buses where we had more kids than that on. So we're going to watch that closely, but in summer we'll go to a fuller bus and let folks know that's what we're going to do.
Okay, so at least doubling the number of kids on each bus and maybe more depending on.
Right, and we'll still ask parents to bring kids to school if they can, if that makes sense for them, just to keep that in place and be able to enable that, but we'll be prepared to take more on the bus.
And I too am intrigued to hear what announcements the governor might have very soon in light of some CDC updates. Okay, great. Any other questions, comments from the board?
Yes, I have another question.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Virtual Virginia, always says that they do not assume the responsibility of the school division with regard to the students who are enrolled there. And they also say on their website that they, each child must have a local mentor. One of the other things that they require, unless that's been changed, is all textbooks, equipment, things like that. So are we up to date with things that they require? At one time, they required like access to a telephone, a fax machine, headphones, a computer, all that, and that it was our responsibility to provide that. So what are we in fact going, or do we know what we have to, I guess my question is, do we know what we have to supply under Virtual Virginia? And are we prepared to have that in place, for their first class?
So, yes, ma'am. So we know that we provide a device which all of our students would have access to, as we did when they were in virtual with us. And we are also prepared, one of the things we encouraged was that they had strong internet. When we found out from Virtual Virginia that there was so much time that they had to have cameras on, face-to-face online, we sent an updated letter to parents giving them an option to reconsider if that was something that would be difficult for them to do. But because we are not under those same strict mitigations, we would also provide a place for them to come in if they needed internet and be supervised.
Okay. And those are at home, those who are able to do it at home, we would provide like something as simple as headphones for these students as well, textbooks, anything, equipment, supplies. That's what we're supposed to provide under my understanding of Virtual Virginia. Anything that they need, not just the device.
Right. And I think, I think that.
We're prepared to do that.
Yes, ma'am. I think the headphones and things like that were more for when Virtual Virginia students were coming to school and being monitored right at school for Virtual Virginia. I think they have that in there, but Mr. Mott didn't seem to think that those types of things would be needed. There's so much virtual content and things now. So the one thing he said was definitely the device. And when we start registering kids, we'll talk about other needs. But we don't feel like it's anything more than things that we provided this year, hotspots, things like that, if necessary.
Okay. And then we will have, and just to clarify, those local mentors, each child will have that local mentor. And then you're going to get back with us regarding who's going to supervise these individuals to ensure that we are meeting whatever needs these students might have.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Kirby?
Dr. Mealy posed a couple question that rang with me when she asked of what everything that we had to supply. We don't have to supply anything that would be on an in-person supply list. In other words, if the in-person kids have to go buy their own earbuds, the Virtual Virginia student should as well, correct?
Yeah, and they don't really need like paper and stuff like that because everything they do is online. They're 100% electronic, online, and I don't know, there wouldn't be a need for earbuds, and that's what Mr. Mott said, if they're home doing instruction. So if we were in the location that we're thinking that we might offer students to come and work, just like any of our locations at the school, there are headphones there that we have available to students if they needed them.
I was just thinking to kind of coin what Mr. Hill said earlier, it wouldn't be fair to ask our in-person students to go buy all these supplies and then supply them to the Virtual Virginia students. So I was just making sure that it was gonna be an even keel.
Absolutely. And we supply a lot of in-person stuff too, earbuds and stuff.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
Any other questions on the plan? All right, well, again, good work. Looking forward to learning more in June as we get closer to resuming a more normal school year for the fall. All right, Mr. Hagler, third quarter financial update.
Yes, good evening. In front of you tonight is a prediction of how the year will end. It's been a challenging year because I'm still in two different systems, trying to gather data and combine it and do predictions on what's gonna happen. So, as I did in the second and in the first quarter, I'm still predicting quite a sizable ending balance, and that has not changed. So I'll walk you through this. The revenue projection and also the expenditure has all the supplemental appropriations, the ones that were approved back in the fall, and also 3 more that you'll have later tonight in category transfer, 1 category transfer. So on the revenue side, after those supplemental appropriations, about $25,000 under budget. So it's coming in right near there. The big savings is really on the expenditure, what's driving the ending balance. Down below, I did list the supplemental appropriations. The 2 big ones were done in the fall, and that was CARES Act money coming from the county and also the CRF funds that we received in December. So those have already been approved by the Board of Supervisors, and I just have to build those in as supplemental into the budget, but it's built into here. The 3 others I'll talk about a little bit later, but they're coming, some smaller ones that I'll be bringing to you, the board, and if the board approves those, I'll take those to the Board of Supervisors on May 24th. Any questions on the revenue side? I will make note that the federal's coming in quite a bit under. Some of our grants just didn't spend as much, and then 1 grant in particular, 21st Century, I had built in some money thinking that the grant was gonna continue. We only had 1 school continue, so I was over budgeted on that. We didn't bring in the revenues, but we didn't have the expenditures, so it offsets on both sides. But too much built into 21st Century, thinking that some of these grants were gonna continue, and they actually came to an end. So that's the biggest driving factor there. But Title I, II, and VI are all coming in under on expenditures, mainly because of purchase services and things that we could not do during the current year. And so those monies will be available for the future. We don't lose those funds, we just have to spend them down in future years and do grant amendments to spend those down. Be happy to answer any questions on the revenue side before we go to the expenditure side.
Ms. Harrison.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just for clarification for me here, the supplemental appropriations,
Yes,
are they included in this chart you have here?
yes, ma'am.
They are.
Those are built in, those supplementals are added into the approved budget. The original approved budget for last year, I add those into the budget, because that's appropriating more money to spend.
Okay,
So I build that onto the revenue side, but also the expenditure side.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Let me just clarify, so that part is that 107,000, the supplemental appropriation?
Which number?
It's part of the budget you list for 2021?
Yes, those were added into that. So all those supplementals increased our budget. So it went up to 107 million. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and those are all federal, is that correct?
The 1 security grant is a state grant. The other security grant is a federal, and everything's federal except the 1 security grant from the state.
Okay. Is it possible in any way, when we have this, to list them as subcategories under wherever they belong? I'm just getting really confused about what's state and what's federal anymore.
I did list A, B, and C on where they're tied to. So you can see the one for C, the security grant is on, I put that supplemental on this, the state, Commonwealth of Virginia. The B ones are all under the federal. And the A, which was the money we received from the county, it was federal money that the county received and shared with us, but it came through a local county transfer. So I'm listing which category they came through on the revenue side.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And one more question, these numbers, like where you have the projected, those are only through March 31st, is that correct?
No, I'm actually projecting the end of the year. I'm taking what has happened as of March and actually looking at what I think is gonna happen over the next 3 months as best I can with a crystal ball, but things do change. I actually will not receive the final funding from the state worksheet until about June 10th. So I don't even know, they'll have my ADM and then enrollment loss, all those calculations I don't have, so a lot of this I'm doing my best at projecting, but it'll be pretty close on the projections. I will say that I just received the sales tax numbers for this month, and they came in a lot stronger than what I think even the state's saying, so I even think we could come out better than this. I think the sales tax is gonna come in much better than that $259,000 loss I'm showing there. I think we might even break even or be above. So that's what changes month by month, and it's hard to predict. But we'll see what happens.
But this is projected through June 30.
Yes, ma'am. This is projecting to the end of the year.
Thank you.
I do take all the expenses, which we'll move on to next, and run out and, electrical, fuel, and kind of predict what's gonna happen. Some of those are, you're using modeling and you're using what's happened through the year, what happened last year, and trying to predict those, but things do change. Best forecast that I can do, but things do change as the next 3 months go on. On the expenditure side, you can see that we're gonna be coming under budget, about 2.8 million, which will give us an ending balance of 2.7. Biggest savings there is on the instructional side. Mainly those CRF funds that we received in December were applied towards our additional staff that we kept on when our enrollment was down. We maintained our staff for instructional, to continue our instruction, and did not cut staff, and that's an acceptable use of that. So that was about 1.6 million of that total amount of savings on the expenditure side. We actually had it budgeted, but we applied for that money towards that, so it moved into a federal reimbursement kind of status, and that's what's producing the savings there. So overall, we look pretty strong on all our categories. Once again, you can see some of them are coming in, under $100,000. Transportation's a lot lighter because we just did a lot less bus runs. Once we get back up in the fall, our bus is running normally. We need the drivers, the buses will be rolling, so there'll be a lot more expenditures there. So I couldn't take any cuts on that in our next year's budget. We had to plan for fully operations there, but there has been some operational savings by operating how we did this year, but that won't continue at full operation. So I'm working with all the directors and who have budget authority over some of these accounts, and working with them as they roll down the year, and I'm watching this as it goes down to make sure we stay on target and on budget for the rest of the year. Behind that is more detail on the each category, major category, and how different lines are coming in. So if you have any questions on that, I'll be happy to answer that before we move on to the other funds, but the operation looks pretty good. What will happen there is once the audit's done, we would bring whatever that ending balance is back to our board for reappropriation and to whatever one-time expenditure things that we think we need. Board can have weigh in on that, but we would probably bring a recommendation. If that's approved, then I would take it to the Board of Supervisors and ask them to reappropriate that money for those one-time expenditures. If they do that, then we have that money reappropriated and can spend. I think we do think of moving some money into textbook for some adoptions. So we'll be bringing that probably later in the fall once the audit's done. So that money's not available right now. It's projected. It'll be available after the Board of Supervisors reappropriates.
So typically like November, December.
Typically.
Okay.
Turning to the last page is the balance sheet report. Nutrition fund, as best we can predict there. Sometimes there's a delay in posting journal entries, but I try to true it up as best as possible. Hopefully it comes down a little bit more by the end of the year, but predicting about $135,000 deficit in the year, revenues to expenditures. All the revenues are really coming from the federal government at this time, really no sales. A little bit a la carte, but not much going on there. So we'll have to continue to watch the nutrition and what's going to transpire next year, and how many kids are buying meals, and what kind of programs they're going to be able to apply for So I think we'll be able to brief the board on that before the start of school on what program and how that's gonna work next year. Textbook fund, projected about 300,000 remaining in that fund at the end of the year. I think during the budget process, I talked to the board about long-term, we probably need to start putting some money into the textbook fund. We will use carryover money to do these adoptions, but long-term, we're gonna probably have to put a long-term plan to get more money in the textbook so we can do adoptions in the future. So we'll have to come up with a plan for that. Maintenance reserve fund, I think Dr. Lewis is gonna brief on the CIP plan later, 1.2 million in there right now. There are some projects going out for bid and things being done, so it's not sitting there not being spent. We're in the process of spending some of that money down and moving forward with these projects as quickly as possible, and I'll wait, he can brief on that a little bit later. But this 1.2 does factor into the CIP plan, that's money available right now to spend. The self-insured health fund, it's about even from where we started at the beginning of the year, so very pleased with that. Haven't seen a real bad year where we're, haven't had to pay out a lot more claims than what the premiums we brought in, so that's kind of maintaining. This is as of March 30th, so we'll see what by the end of June if that changes at all. But the consultants feel very comfortable with what we built into the budget with no premium increase based upon what's happening and our balances that we have right now. So I know we put that in the budget with no increase in premium, but they continue to watch it each month and it's been positive and holding steady. So if this had gone down a lot, we might have had to readjust on that, but we feel very comfortable with the premiums at no increase next year. Be happy to answer any questions on these other funds if they're already on that.
Any questions? Ms. Gerby, yes.
Mr. Hagler, I know you're usually really spot on and I admire how close you get with your projections. But I'm looking at ground service and equipment services. Do we just have an unusual expenditure that caused a 19.9 and a 27.6?
Some ground services, there's some things there that the spikes, there are some line items that are coming in under budget this year, and so we're not gonna spend down. So I think there was some opportunity to maybe buy some equipment that were long overdue, like some mowers and stuff. So I went ahead and released them to go ahead and do that. So you'll see some lines kind of spike because we're coming in on some other line items, and it's an opportunity to kind of catch up on some long due replacement cycles that we do have replacement cycle and built in, but this allows us to catch up a little bit more. So I've kind of given the maintenance department the okay to go ahead and do that.
And one more question, and Dr. Dillis, you could probably help with this. Are we still gonna be eligible for the meals grant? Because I know last year we delivered the meals during the summer months. Are we still gonna be able to do that? And the second part of that is, does that grant cover the transportation cost of delivering them?
Because so much has opened up in our economy, since, as opposed to last spring when we were delivering. It's not our plan to do any meal deliveries. We still do plan to do meals in all of our summer programs, which are going to be longer days and more days this year. To offer curbside at all those sites, as well as working with some groups for summer feeding programs off-site. YMCA programs, for example, who've been clients for a long time. We are hopeful, and we don't have all the full details on it, but we have gotten indication that even next school year, there will be a modified model for reimbursement from the federal government, which could benefit our families a great deal. And I don't know enough details about it. We're just learning about it this week, but at an upcoming meeting when we do an update for next year, I'll know a lot more, probably even by next month. So we're hopeful about that going into the school year.
So is the meal delivery completely off the table? Because I know, and I'm probably using an 80s, 90s term here, but I know there are latchkey kids who are at home, and those are the ones that can really benefit from it. And if you have a 5th grader, he can't drive himself to his school to pick up his meal, but he could walk to the end of his block to pick it up. And those are the kids that could really, really benefit from getting these meals. And so I hate to think that we won't deliver them in any shape or form, or at least a couple of days a week or something.
We delivered last year through the end of the school year when we would have been providing meals at school. We didn't deliver in the summer, however, we did have locations for pickup in the summer throughout the county. That's not something we've done in any summer. Delivery is not something we've done in any summer to date. So, if that were to be something the board wished us to spin up, we would need to do some planning on that. But the summer feeding program does encourage us to get out in the community to as many programs, daycare programs, childcare programs, those sorts of things, athletic teams, things like that. We do a lot of that to reach a lot of kids. And sometimes in doing that can provide more than one meal at a time. So get a meal, but take tomorrow's meal, for example.
Or could you, the restrictions, I know, for example, my church would probably be more than happy to come and pick up a bunch of meals and deliver them. Could the meals be released to that church to deliver the meals, or could they be released to someone else that would volunteer to come and deliver the meals? Or do they have to be released specifically to that student?
I think under the current model, there is some flexibility there. I don't know when there was some real regulation loosening going on through the year, so I don't know when those rules kick back in to say, no, it has to be to the individual. I think we're still in a pretty flexible period. There do have to be really good records kept about how many meals are actually handed off for reimbursement. And so, we have worked with groups in the past to do training on that, to be able to do it. I think if there's a specific question from a group, Karen Arthur, our nutrition supervisor, would love to talk to them about those ideas to see how that can help the community. She partners with a lot of different groups out there, so
Thank you.
invite that conversation if there is interest.
Thank you.
All right, so we were right up against the dinner break. Any final questions on the third quarter financial update? Seeing and hearing none, let's break for dinner, and the board will return at 7 p.m. for our regular session.
Mr. Johnson, do you already called out?
Let me see. Yes, Barry is nodding yes. Talk to you soon.
Oh, he's not yet, okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The problem is because I do like that the young students have to be camera on, face-to-face with teachers, pretty much like 8 to 1:30. They have like a very specific schedule, like reading from this time and math from this time.
Yeah.
So I think that'll help us a lot.
It will.
So if you go down to the
Yes, sir.
Summer, or she's staying.
She's graduating tomorrow.
She is graduating.
another one right there.
I need Marlene to call her. Marlene graduates tomorrow too.
Does she? Oh, that's so exciting.
Me too.
Yeah.
There's a nice dress
I
for-
laughed, you know, it'll be the first time, she's been on campus twice this year. For 2 COVID tests that she's been, her name's been drawn out of a hat. And then the third time will be tomorrow when she goes out to graduate.
Isn't that crazy?
I wanted to say that we've even done better than some colleges about in person, but I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, you know.
Good evening. I'd like to reconvene our May meeting of the Bedford County School Board. Let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Mealy is unable to be with us physically, but she is on the phone tonight. Not yet, okay. So we're trying to reconnect with Dr. Mealy, okay. Dr. Mealy, if you're watching at home, please call us. Okay. So we'll move into public comment. The public comment portion of tonight's agenda is limited to 25 minutes. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes, while anyone representing an organized group will be allowed 5 minutes, provided they are the sole speaker from that group or organization. Speakers are asked to state their name, address, voting district, and organization or group if applicable. The school board is here to listen to your comments but will not engage or respond to speakers during this 25-minute period. Please remember that this is a public meeting and that we expect all speakers to refrain from any foul, abusive, or hateful language. Mr. Edwards will serve as timekeeper for individual speakers with a ringing bell indicating that a person has 30 seconds remaining, and a second bell will ring indicating a person's 3 minutes have expired. Dr. Rogers will serve as timekeeper for our cumulative 25-minute period. When Mr. Edwards' 3-minute timer bell rings, please discontinue speaking and allow the next person in line to come to the podium. Should you be unable to finish your comments, please send them or give them to Mrs. Johnson and she will give them to board members. Mr. Edwards, do we have anyone signed up to speak this evening?
Mr. Chairman, we have a blank slate and empty seats.
A blank slate and empty seats. Well, would anyone else that is filling some of the few non-empty seats like to avail themselves of this opportunity? Jamie, you have nothing? Nothing?
This is the first.
This is a first, yeah. Any updates from the sheriff's department you want to share with us tonight? No?
Great job on getting everybody through the year.
And thank you to the resource officers for everything that you guys do.
That's long enough.
Yes. All right, well, since we have no speakers signed up and no one in attendance wants to speak tonight, we will close the comment period and move into the rest of our agenda tonight. All right, so do we, gotta scroll down. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, so I heard Ms. Kirby say so moved really quickly, and then I heard Dr. Hicks, so why don't we say Ms. Kirby made the motion and Dr. Hicks seconded.
Sounds good.
All right. So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved. Welcome back, Dr. Mealy.
Thank you.
All right. So our first action item this evening, 8.01, VSBA Superintendent Recognition and Resolution. So as everyone knows, every year, the Virginia Association of School Superintendents selects a Superintendent of the Year from each of our Commonwealth's 8 regions. And then from that pool, one superintendent is selected to be Virginia's Superintendent of the Year. A few years ago, Dr. Shook was one of the regional superintendents, but didn't make it to the overall prize. Well, a few months ago, I received an email from the Virginia School Boards Association, who has been working with the Superintendents Association, and they have decided that because this has been such an unusual and chaotic year, and so many decisions had to be made, so many things had to be done differently, that they wanted to recognize all of our school superintendents this year. So there will not be one Superintendent of the Year, there will be 133 Superintendents of the Year. So, Dr. Rogers, congratulations. I bet you did not anticipate this when you came out of retirement to serve as our interim. But seriously, I know Dr. Shook and his team worked hard to assemble the task forces and implement the plan and develop the plan that we had going during first semester, and that you picked up the baton and ran very ably with since January. So we would like to thank him as well. And there is a resolution here that Dr. Rogers has asked us to please not read. But if you have had an opportunity to read it, that is the resolution that we are being asked to vote on this evening. So in respecting our Superintendent of the Year's wishes, we will not read the resolution, but do we have a motion to approve the resolution recognizing our own interim superintendent, Dr. Julie Rogers, as one of Virginia's Superintendents of the Year?
So moved.
All right. Have a motion by Mr. Leamy. Do we have a second? Second by.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Comments? All right. In that case, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Hearing no opposition. The resolution is approved unanimously. Congratulations, Madam Superintendent of the Year.
Thank you.
And how fitting as well, this being your last meeting with us as well, so. Moving right along. Special Education Annual Plan, Ms. Jennings.
Yes, thank you. The last board meeting, you were provided information on the 21-22 Annual Special Education Plan in accordance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act and the regulations governing special ed programs for children with disabilities in Virginia and school board policy, IGBA. Local school divisions must submit an annual plan and applications for the provision of special ed and related services to eligible students with disabilities who reside in the jurisdiction as an agreement for implementing federal and state laws. So that information was provided last time, and it's up for y'all's approval.
Do we have a motion on the Special Ed Action Plan, or Annual Plan?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the special education plan as presented.
All right, so we have a motion by Dr. Hicks. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hill. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor of approving the Special Education Action Plan as presented, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the Special Education Action Plan is approved unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Jennings. Category transfers, Mr. Hagler.
Yes, in line with the forecast that I mentioned earlier, there's only one category transfer that I'm bringing to the board tonight for this year's budget, and that's to transfer money out of the instructional major category into the technology major category. of $200,000. The main reason for this is the very, very long delay in getting our Chromebooks. We put orders in for our Chromebooks, I believe, in October, and I think we received them last month. So these are Chromebooks we're buying for next year that we can work over the summer. We do have Chromebooks that are coming off lease, but in order to get the full quantity that we really wanted to, we did have some gear and some federal grant money that went towards this also to help us this year. But we are buying some devices that are coming off a lease that we think are very useful. So the federal tech gear grant and also this transfer will allow us to move forward to do that and be better prepared for next year for one-to-one or devices for our kids all the way through. So it's my recommendation to do a $200,000 transfer from instruction over to the technology subcategory.
Great. We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the transfer of funds of $200,000 from the instruction category to the technology category.
Okay. So we have a motion by Dr. Hicks to accept the category transfer as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hill.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, category transfers that you teased us about before the dinner break are approved. I believe you're up next too, aren't you? Supplemental appropriations?
Yes, that was the category transfer. There are 3 supplemental appropriations, 2 security grants. One's a federal, one's a state, and also the Competitive CARES Act, which was called the GEAR grant, which we went after and secured. And I'm just bringing it now because we've figured out what categories and revised and amended that grant about 6 or 7 times. So we're finally settled on that, and I'm bringing that before the board for recommendation for those supplemental appropriations.
So Mr. Hagler, do we need to approve each of these separately or can we approve them as a block?
I believe you can approve them as a block.
Okay.
Is that right, Ms. John? Yes.
Any questions? We can go right into a motion. We have a motion to approve.
I move we approve the supplemental appropriations as presented.
Mr. Leamy moves that we approve the supplemental appropriations as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All right, any discussion, questions, concerns? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All appropriations are approved as presented, and it's always good to see grant money coming in. The Randy Hagler Show continues. County refinancing opportunity.
I will say the federal grant will also be there next year. It's 2 or 3 years where we'll be spending that money down for upgraded security. So Ryan Edwards and also Dr. Dewis secured that grant, and we're spending that money and reimbursing as we go. So there's so much needed upgraded security that we're going to be doing in our schools. So the refinancing opportunity years ago, trying to remember, any of you were on the board when we did the Noresco deal with the county, and we did upgraded, Dr. Hicks, you were here?
I was.
We did upgrades to our facilities, lighting and other things, which allowed us to do upgrades to some boilers and stuff. That was I believe a 15-year or 20-year borrow, I'm not sure. So you borrowed the money, did those upgrades, and the savings, the operational savings pays for the debt. The debt is on the county's books, but it was a joint operation with the county. The county was approached that there's some interest savings they can do if they refinance that. And so they want to move forward with that. However, since it was a joint operation, they need the school board's approval to meet the filing deadline tomorrow to go ahead and refinance. So if the board is in agreement for the county to go ahead and refinance and recognize some interest savings, that's the resolution before you tonight.
So you're saying we cannot table this for next month?
Correct.
You could, but incur the wrath of the
You could, but
county.
it would prevent the board of supervisors from going forward and meeting that deadline of refinancing.
do not want to mess that up. So, do we have a motion then on the resolution for refinancing?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the resolution to refinance the county's debt.
Okay. Right, so we have a motion from Dr. Hicks to approve the resolution regarding refinancing the county loan for the Noresco project. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Kirby. Any discussion?
I do have one question.
Sir?
Do we know how the county, did the Board of Supervisors, was it a 7 agreement? Or was there any concern or discussion around this before it come to us?
I don't believe so. To be honest, I didn't watch the meeting. I'm not sure when it was presented at their meeting. It might have been presented at their last, but I didn't have any indication from the administration over at the county that there was any issue with this.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. The motion is approved unanimously. The county can make the deadline for refinancing the loan. All right. Superintendent's report for the final time.
Final time.
Dr. Rogers, yes ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have several updates. First of all, I would like to announce the approval to the public of Mr. Scott Simmons as the new Safety and Security Manager. As the current Forest Middle School principal, he will transition to this position by July 1 as Mr. Gary Lowry, current Safety and Security Manager, retires. Mr. Simmons has been a teacher and administrator for 29 years, originally graduating from Stanton River High School. And as a longtime Bedford County native and veteran administrator in the county, Mr. Simmons will bring a wealth of experience working in schools and on school security issues. So we welcome Mr. Simmons to the position, and we have posted the position of Forest Middle School principal for hire. So as they say, in with the new and out with the old. So speaking of the old, we want to congratulate Dr. Tony Francis on his appointment as superintendent of Univista City Schools. And I would also like to thank Dr. Francis for his many years of service to Bedford County Public Schools as Jefferson Forest High School principal and as director of adolescent learning. He has provided positive and clear leadership for teachers and administrators and has supported executive staff in planning and communication efforts. And I would personally like to thank him for all of his support for me in my role this year. I will ask board members, like I asked senior staff members, to please give Dr. Francis any extra tasks that you may have right up until the end of June so that he will know that he is needed and appreciated. But congratulations and thank you. Last night was the virtual awards ceremony for the Central Virginia Regional Science Fair, and we had several Bedford County Public Schools winners. From the 5th grade winners, we had first place was James Gray Kane for the Ruby Goldberg Challenge, and the second place winner was Taylor Woodruff. Both of them were from the Bedford Connects program. And for the grades 6 through 8 winners, the Excellence Award winner was David Wilkinson, who is a 7th grade student at Liberty Middle School. And his project has been sent to the Broadcom Masters International Science Fair. Also, the Virginia Lakes and Watersheds Prize went to Ashley Hewitt, an 8th grade student in Bedford Connects. And that project will also be sent to the Broadcom Masters International Science Fair. The Virginia Dental Society Award went to Ellie Joan, a 6th grade student with Bedford Connects. And the Naval Science Award went to Sebastian Sowards, a 6th grade student also with Bedford Connects. So congratulations to all those students. As far as a graduation update, Most of the information that we have now has already been disseminated. There will be a meeting of Liberty University officials, executive staff, and principals on May the 19th to review the logistical information for parking, seating, inclement weather, and so forth. And that information will be disseminated through principals to the students and families, and Dr. Woodford will update you through email. Please remember that you will not be seated on the stage this year, so you don't have to wear your gowns. And if you haven't already communicated with Ms. Johnson, please let her know if you plan to attend and which graduations, so that you can be announced. And we do plan to have a room set aside for you if you're planning to save for multiple graduations. So we should know a little bit more about that next week. Next, please be aware that the American Rescue Plan for distributing federal ESSER funds, the Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Act, has guidelines for developing and communicating plans for the use of approximately $12 million for Bedford County Public Schools. And I think Mr. Hagler gave us some updates a couple months ago about these different pots of money. Currently, Dr. Bergen and the executive staff have met to discuss creating a comprehensive funding plan for all of the funding streams that we received from CARES 1, CARES 2, and the ESSER funds. As discussed at previous school board meetings, some of that funding is being spent on staffing, HVAC and air quality upgrades in schools, carpeting and associated maintenance replacements and upgrades, and learning loss summer school support. Just today, we received additional information that there will be guidelines about the development of these plans and the communication of them. And there will be opportunities for the public to provide input. And executive staff and Dr. Bergen will determine what that will look like and will communicate that in the near future. Finally, as you mentioned, this is my last board meeting. I'm distraught that this is my last one, but I had a few final thoughts that I would like to share from this experience. First, I continue to have much respect for you as board members and others who serve our students and communities and have the vision to plan for their present and their future. Beyond politics, beyond personal agendas, popularity, it's not an easy job. It's a lot easier that it looks from the outside than it is from the inside. I also have an additional respect for Dr. Shook, his executive and senior staffs, principals, and others who had the foresight last year to implement research and develop a COVID response plan that was able to get students back into school in September when many other school divisions did not. It's been my honor to work with the great leaders in the school system to provide support, communication, and closure to a somewhat chaotic year. And I'm especially proud of the perseverance and resilience of our teachers, nurses, bus drivers, nutrition workers, paras, and others who came to work on the front lines and sometimes did work they never envisioned that they would do every day to make instruction possible for our students. I'm also proud of our students and parents. Though I didn't work with them directly, many of them emailed or came to our board meetings to articulate their needs and requests in a professional manner and live by decisions that were not always made in their favor. This reflects much about their character. I appreciate their fortitude and hope that we've all come through this year for the better, having learned not something about how to deal with a pandemic, but learn something positive about ourselves as we united in decision-making for the common good. Maybe not always the popular decision, and perhaps not always the right decision in hindsight, but always a decision made with the best intentions for children and with respect for the opinions of all. Lastly, I wish the best for all of you, to Dr. Bergen and to Bedford County Public Schools moving forward. I believe the future is in great hands, and I will continue to support you in any way that I can. Thank you again for the opportunity, and God bless. Thank you.
you, Dr. Rogers, and if you ever, we might take you up on that offer, so be careful how you extend that. All right, so at this point, we'll move back up to pick up with the staff reports, where we left off before the dinner break. So Mr. Hagler, you are back with bonus options.
Some board meetings I go without speaking and then some I just.
We
load 'em up.
missed you,
So, Before the board tonight, I brought back a bonus option that was discussed when we were developing the budget and said I would bring this back after the third quarter forecast, which I presented earlier tonight. From that forecast, you can tell that any of these options can be supported. So there was, I developed this by looking at, because the way the discussion went when we were developing the budget revolved around the restoration step for teachers that was gonna be done next year's budget, which is in next year's budget, but there wasn't enough there to do a restoration step for support staff, those that were frozen during the recession. So what I did is I looked at anybody that we still owe a restoration step to in the support. Now, support is anybody that's not on the teacher scale. So from nutrition workers, bus drivers, aides, nurses, all the way up to some administrators, principals and things. So I looked at that and said, what would be something equitable to do? And not moving beyond what we were gonna do a restoration step. So I looked at the lower levels of what our support staff and was recommending a $500 bonus. One board member said, well, does that net out the $500? No, there would be taxes. So if you wanted that to net out at the lower levels, I can't predict everybody's tax status or what they have in there. But there's two options there. At $500, they would net out less than that after taxes. At about $600, everybody should net out at least $500. At the lower levels, that's a bigger percentage of their salary than at the higher levels, because it's a flat amount. But before the board is those two proposals. It is only for those that we owe restoration steps to and the support. So if those that were hired and are in their lane, that would not be going to them. I want to make that clear. And so that's about 395 employees that would receive that bonus in the May check. And either of those options can be supported with the forecast that I presented earlier. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those proposals.
Any questions for Mr. Hagler on this, the two options? Mr. Hill?
So Dr. Hagler, you said what employees would it impact again?
All support employees that are not on the teacher pay scales.
Okay.
So if you think about the teacher, it's probably easier to tell you who's on the teacher scale than who's not. That's teachers, guidance counselors, librarians. Dr. Connor, anybody else I'm missing there?
Yeah, of course, your related arts people.
Related arts, but teachers, ITRTs are teachers too.
But they would have got a pay scale increase based on what we had decided, correct?
Anybody that was frozen during the recession would receive a restoration step in next year's budget. So those teachers would get, so teachers that are in their right lane, no restoration steps due. So all employees next year are getting the 2.5% cost of living, and some are stepping. Teachers that are owed a restoration step would get 2 steps next year. This is dealing with the support staff that we did not restore a frozen step to.
Okay, gotcha.
So this bonus would go to administrators as well?
Anybody on the administrative staff, we break out our salary scales. So on the administrative staff, salary scales are psychologists, coordinators, system engineer, OT, PTs, assistant principals, and principals are all on the administrative staff scales. So it would be going to them. My proposal has them in there too.
I don't know that I would be in favor of that.
All right, hang on. Dr. Mealy, we forget. Yep.
Okay, I'm just saying that I don't know that I'm in favor of giving a bonus to administrative staff.
Ms. Hairston?
I just wanted, Mr. Hagler, just some clarification in terms of who these group of individuals are. Did I understand you correctly to say that it includes bus drivers?
Yes, ma'am.
It does?
Nutrition workers, pairs,
Okay.
yes, custodians,
And bus drivers?
yes, all of them. Anybody that gets a contract that's not on the teacher.
All right.
Dr. Mealy?
Yes, and this is probably a kind of a silly question, I'm gonna ask it anyway, because I just can't remember. We took care of, or have we taken care of those teachers that were above the 30-year mark? I thought we did.
In the current year, back in November, we did give a bonus to those teachers that were above the 30. In next year's budget, there's nothing in the budget for that next year, but something I could bring back to the board at a later date, depending on how the year's coming. But if you're above the 30-year mark, or above, you're at the maximum or above on the teacher scale next year, you don't get a step, you would only get the 2.5% cost of living adjustment in the budget.
Okay.
Great, Mr. Leamy.
Yeah, I'm with Dr. Hicks. I don't know that I'm comfortable with, giving administrators at that level this bonus. I mean, I think that those dollars could be better allocated down to the, the support staff that, are more than worthy of this bonus.
I just did the calculations on anybody that was frozen, that had not been restored in. So there were 7 frozen steps. We've restored 1 to support staff, so.
Yeah, and
Please.
I think our overall objective was to give that bonus to our employees who were not impacted by the steps, correct? And I mean, administration is not in a step, so, I mean, and they worked the hours, they went through the same thing all of the other staff that we're trying to give back to say thank you and to, so I wouldn't be comfortable leaving them off, and I understand there's a significant pay difference, but it's because of the different positions that each of our employees are in, so I would certainly want to support doing that bonus.
I would also agree with that, especially given this year. I think everyone went way above and beyond, or at least tried to, and we asked a lot of these people. Again, I think that's just a way for us to say thank you.
Okay, Dr. Hicks.
The difference between what the administrators got in extra income from from their COLA and step increase percentage of a much higher salary already gives them a much more usable money than the people on the other end of the scale.
When you say step increase, I thought we said they did not get everybody's getting a COLA at 2.5%.
Everybody's getting a COLA. Everybody that is able to step will step next year. This was to deal with the restoration step. Those that were frozen from 2009 to about 2015, 16, where we did not step. So that's what we're dealing with. So administrators and support will step next year and get the 2.5% cost of living adjustment.
I didn't understand that.
Yes, I apologize that I make that clear.
I thought you made a clear statement of they would not.
No, everybody gets a step next year if you're not above the maximum, and also gets the cost of living adjustment. This dealt with really the restoration step that the teachers were getting, that were owed a restoration step during the recession that were frozen. And so I looked at any support staff that were frozen for 6 years and did not receive a step, and just looked at that in general.
So this is in a replacement for or not a replacement, but this is in lieu of a restoration step for those employees.
At the amount, everybody's salary is different. So at the lower levels, yes, that would kind of like, there's a bonus this year, but you don't get a restoration step next year. At the lower ends, yes, that's almost kind of a replacement. At the higher ends, no, it's a fraction of that because it doesn't equal the total percentage that it normally would.
Okay.
Because it's a flat amount.
Harrison.
Mr. Hagler, I think I have a good idea in terms of the administration and who that encompasses, but can you, just for clarification for me, principals?
Yes, ma'am.
Assistant principals?
Yes, ma'am.
Directors, supervisors?
It would go down to supervisors on the administrative scale. I just took a look at that. I'm not 100% sure, but psychologists are on the administrative scale, security manager, system engineer, and I'm not 100% sure, I'll have to double check this, but maybe OT and PTs are also on the administrative scale.
Okay.
How many total individuals did you say would be, or would receive this bonus?
395.
395.
Because there was a little bit of discussion about administrative, it's about 46 individuals. Not all of them are owed a restoration step, but 46 are.
Okay.
I was just gonna ask that.
So I think, looks like we have some board members that are saying everyone should get it, some that are saying those on the administrative scale should not. So maybe we should go around and get a clearer sense of what the consensus of the board.
And I would also add which option,
True.
the 5 or the 600, to give me some guidance on that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just,
Sir.
the 46 that you just mentioned,
Yes.
is that 46 that fall in administration?
Yes, sir.
And are you saying those 46 did or did not receive a step increase?
They did receive a step increase. Everybody's getting a step
All
increase.
46?
Yes, sir. They did get a step and a 2.5% COLA next year.
Okay,
They were,
but-
those 46 were frozen at their levels and did not receive steps from 2009 to 2016.
I'm sorry, say that last statement again?
Those 46 were employed by us from, at some point, either between 2009 and 2016, and they did not receive a step because we froze our steps during the recession. We did not give employees steps. So they were frozen. They did not get their normal step during that time frame.
Okay. So how are they different than the other 300? What is that, 349, 339?
I think based upon what I'm hearing from the board, whether they're administration or below that is the discussion, but they were frozen just like everybody else.
They were frozen, but they're not getting a step next year.
They're not, I know we keep coming back to it. They're getting a step, a 2.5% cost of living, just like everybody else. But because they were frozen during that time frame, there's still 6 steps we have not restored to them that they did not receive during the recession. They are not getting that restoration step next year, only teachers are getting the restoration
So it's
step.
about the restoration step.
Yeah, some teachers are gonna get 2 steps next year, a restoration. No support staff is getting 2 steps next year,
Okay.
only 1.
That includes I'm sorry, that includes administration will only get 1?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
The only people that won't get 1 is if they're at the maximum.
all right.
All right, so why don't we address who should get it first, and then we can circle back to which option we prefer in that case. All right, so, well, first of all, any other questions or clarification for Mr. Hagler before we address into that? Okay, all right, Mr. Hill?
I think the 395 should get it.
Okay, so you were for everyone that qualifies, okay? Mr. Lee?
I think we need to take the admin folks out of it. I think we need to concentrate on the lower, the folks on the lower end of the pay scale.
Okay, all right, Ms. Kirby?
I think we need to do the full 395.
Ms. Hairston?
I think we should exclude the administration, and I vote for option 2.
Okay. We'll come back to the options.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm ahead
So,
of us.
no administration, okay. Dr. Hicks?
No administration.
No administration, okay, and Dr. Mealy?
The full 395.
Okay, so full 385, okay. And it's 3-3, yeah, so I will also go along with everyone since it is helping with the restoration step that was not granted. Otherwise, I would definitely be in the other column on this. Okay, so now let's talk about option 1 versus option 2. So we'll go the opposite direction this time. So Dr. Hicks.
$600.
Okay, so Dr. Hicks prefers option 2, the $600. Ms. Harrison.
Option 2.
All right. All right, Ms. Kirby.
Option 2.
Option 2. I'm sensing a trend here.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying not to put me on the spot this time. 2. To Dr. Neely?
Option two.
Option 2, okay. And I will make it unanimous, so option 2.
That will be reflected in the May paychecks.
Okay, so the May paychecks, okay.
Do we need to vote on that, or is it just based on consensus?
It's just a consensus item, right?
Okay.
Okay. All right. CIP update, Dr. Dewis.
Thank you. There are several updates to this capital improvement plan since the last review in the winter. And I'll run through a few of them specifically. HVAC projects are well underway at Huddleston, Manita, Forest Elementary, and Big Island. In fact, Huddleston's nearly complete. They've been able to do work at creative times to work around the school day, and the company wanted to get a head start on that one, so that's great news. And then they'll begin on the others that they're doing in the summer. All are scheduled to be completed by the start of school. The Susie Gibson rear roadway that I discussed at a previous meeting has been blocked off now due to some increased bank erosion. And a bid's been advertised to repair the bank and to repair the pipe that runs the length of the field that's down below Susie Gibson. In June, at the June meeting, we'll ask for your approval of that bid. And so we have an estimate for the cost in the CIP, but we're actually bidding that out. So we hope that this work will be complete by the start of school. However, that may run into the fall. We're going to ask the company who wins the bid to start on the bank portion so that perhaps that roadway can be put back into use. We're rerouting traffic now. It'll just help if we can get the road done first. Carpet replacement projects at 5 schools are planned. We're planning to hire some temporary workers in the summer just to assist, because in the schools where the carpet's going to be removed, it's in every classroom. And so that means every piece of furniture will be moved out and then moved back in again at the end after the new tile is waxed and prepared. So there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting. And that work will be complete by the start of school. We've got a schedule on that. We've also arranged for tennis court repair and resurfacing at Liberty High School and Jefferson Forest High School. That work will be complete by the start of school. We also have added into the chart estimates for Stanton River High School water line repair, Stanton River High School cafeteria HVAC replacement, which had not been on a list previously, and also school administrative office roof and windows. Got some bad leakage there, and water's not good to buildings when it doesn't go where it's supposed to. So in the Stanton River High School HVAC cafeteria HVAC replacement is an example of the kind of thing that can pop up at any moment when something unforeseen happens. We're getting ahead of a lot of that with our Honeywell preventive maintenance contract, but still having enough funds in this project fund to address unforeseen items is really important. So I just throw that out there as a caution. We'll need to be aware of 2 ongoing issues just with any future capital planning. Number one, costs are escalating rapidly in this sector. Product availability is challenging at times, and so we just need to keep that in mind as we go forward. And then the other thing is there are other needs not currently on the plan that we're studying now that will show up in future versions, including HVAC work that goes beyond total system replacements, like we see several of in the plan, that really focus on the software and hardware controls. The mechanical units are one thing; they need to blow air, but when they blow air and how much air and what temperature the air is all controlled by very intricate technology, and so those controls make it work. And when we do whole system replacements, that's included. but we have some outdated controls in situations where the mechanical equipment's still okay. For example, Liberty High School, Jefferson Forest High School, are places where we don't need to replace whole mechanical units, but we will need to be addressing controls issues in the next bit of time. We're working to get estimates on that and a schedule of how that ought to happen. That could be in the $2 to $3 million range just for those two schools. So I want to put that out there to say it's not in the plan yet, but it's going to need to be, and it can be phased in. That's the kind of thing probably also that could qualify for this CARES Act money. So there's more to talk about as we learn more about it, but I wanted to say that to you. I'll bring much more information about that when we talk about this again. The reason it's going to be important is at those two schools, those high schools that I mentioned, the controls they have, we really can't get replacement parts for. And so we can create our own replacement parts by phasing in, put new controls on some parts, take the old parts and have them for spares, and that can help a phase-in approach, or we can do it all at once. We'll just have to see what makes sense as we gather more information. I'm happy to answer any questions about this. I'm really pleased with the progress we're making on all the projects that we said we wanted to get done now. That's been a ton of work that Sheldon Cash, who's here tonight, and Charles Santor have really spearheaded to arrange for all of that. And it's going to happen, and it's going to be kind of messy in places through the summer, but come fall, we're going to be in much better shape because of it.
Mr. Leamy.
Yes, on the carpet replacement, you may have said it, it may have just blown past me, but we're not replacing carpet with carpet, I hope.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we're gonna.
Except maybe in limited places like offices and libraries where we're gonna put a really heavy-duty vinyl carpet tile.
Okay, yeah, because you know, if we're gonna take the carpet out, and I would like to put something in that is much easier to clean, sanitize.
Absolutely, and it'll be vinyl tile like this.
Okay.
In 90% of those areas, just those selected places where carpet, for acoustic reasons or whatever other reasons, makes sense, but
understood.
the
Okay.
vast majority, definitely, that's why we're doing it. We've gotta keep a better cleaning regimen going.
Ms. Hairston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Dewis, earlier, Mr. Hagler indicated that there was $1.2 million in our current reserve in the budget. So, I'm just thinking back on previous conversations we've had, all of us, about concerns of various schools in our districts and their HVAC system. Boonesboro is one that I believe, like all the others that's on our list, is in dire need. I'm wanting to know, what are we doing with the 1.2 million that's in the reserve? Help me understand. Is that already earmarked?
So in the blue portion at the bottom of the chart, I outlined several revenue sources, right? There's CARES Act money. I've tried to highlight that in yellow too, just to really be able to see that. County revenue, end of year reappropriations, and so forth. The very top left number is our starting point, and that's the 1.2 million. So really, that money that's already in reserve is baked into this amount of revenue in the current year. And then at the bottom of each year, you'll see the amount that would carry to the next year. So we set up Mr. Hagler worked, and we set up formulas to try to show, if we do all this work, we'll have this much left, we think. Put that at the start of the next year, we'll add to it with other things, and then we'll keep building. We could add to this with other year-end carryover over the years. We could have additional funding from other sources. This is what we know about right now, including the starting point.
Okay.
And Boonesboro is clearly in the next round of projects. So as soon as we get these four taken care of, we're gonna begin the planning for that next round, and that'll be done, you know, in fairly short order, along with several other schools.
In terms of a timeline for Boonesboro?
Well, you know, with the 4 projects we're doing now, we went into it fairly quickly because we had the CARES Act money available initially. You may remember, we thought we had a deadline to spend it, which got extended, and we were able to do better with the pricing. I imagine going forward with the next round, we'd immediately begin to get those designed.
Okay.
We probably have time now to go out for bid. We don't have to do that in procurement. There are other contracts we can use, but, the market is such that we need to do the best we can, I think, because of escalating costs and availability. So I think we have a little more leeway here, lead time. So go out to bid, and then we have time to get those in place. If companies are able to do what Honeywell did and get in there during school to do some work, great. We'll certainly work with them to do it. Typically, these are summertime projects when they're, loud and up in ceilings and on roofs and things. So next summer, I'd say probably, yep, unless we can get to it sooner.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Dr. Lewis, several times now you've come before us and said to be aware of something or that something was hanging out on the horizon. Would it be possible as a CIT, like for the Susie G. Gibson, for example, to just give us a summary of what we need to do there and a cost, like you also mentioned the water project. I guess, when we say, when you apply us to be aware and it's not there, it would really help me, I don't know if it helps you and the other board members, to have that, just a little summary there to remind us of what it is we need to do, or, like you spoke about controls that might be needed, and I know you mentioned that several times. It would help me if we could have something like that.
This is a worksheet about costs. You're right. It's not a detailed document describing each project. Certainly we, for these upcoming projects, I can do that, if that's the board's wish. Add behind this with written descriptions of each. Is that a direction the board would like to take?
I just, like I said, I just forget, I'm not exactly, I know something about the road and pipe for CDG, it would just be helpful to have that in front of us. For me, I speak for myself, to have that, to know exactly where we're going or what these be aware, are, in the future.
So, Dr. Mealy, just to get a little clarification, are you asking for like a caption in this document that would describe the project? Or like when Dr. Dewis says this project may be coming up, if we got an email or something that had more of a description of the project in the email?
Yeah, to me, like, when you're replacing HVAC, I get that, okay, I know, but like for the control, for example, Dr. Dewis gave us quite an explanation about why it didn't work. When he said it, I did remember he said that before, but if I were to pick up this document, I don't remember that. So I think things that are not like you said, servicing tennis courts, I understand that. But just, a brief summary of some sort to, projects that aren't intuitive, I guess, is what I would be helpful to me.
Okay. What would the board like to do with that?
I'm certainly not opposed to more information. I certainly think information that could help us better understand it and refer to in the future is always a help. Absolutely.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I mean, I kind of have a background in this, so I don't really need an explanation into how the watch works. I'm more about, okay, what time is it versus how the watch works. So, I mean, a detailed sort of explanation, I mean, I don't want to create any additional work for anyone. If we could get like just a kind of a verbal dump, that would work for me.
Same.
If this document is public to when people look on board docs, it would be good if you had something like when we used to write the elementary school definitions, what it is, dash, and just 5 or 6 words as to what you're explaining, just so the people that are reading it, other than us who have been talking about this stuff for years, but somebody who's reading board docs for the first time would have a general idea. I think it would be appeasing for people on the outside looking in.
Understood, and unfortunately, there will always be the next thing. I wish I could say this list is exhaustive, comprehensive.
You mean we're not done once we get through all of these items?
There will always be the next trouble spot, and we're trying to get ahead of a lot of that, and I think we'll see that happening with these new pieces of equipment going in. So understood that, when there are, especially ones that aren't so straightforward, we'll figure out a mechanism to do that. The other thing I just want.
Dr. Dewey, I do understand this is a living, breathing document, so that would be fine. I wouldn't expect that you would be able to look into a crystal ball and see anything that might come up, so I think that's what the beauty of the document is, that you would be able to add or subtract or whatever, as things became known and are on the horizon to do, so I don't want you to think you would have to include everything. I understand you can't do that.
Understood.
No, that's a good question, just for
Sure.
clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Down below where you have your other identified needs, and by the way, I'm very grateful that you got the court resurfacing on there.
Yes.
Where you talk about the additional courts at Liberty High School,
Yes, ma'am.
250 vendor budget estimate.
I've had a couple firms take a look at that. The firm that was at the higher end, I included here, knowing that one of the estimates didn't include a lot of site grading, site work, leveling, and that sort of thing. So that's the best estimate I have just on high-end budget numbers that were given by a couple different tennis court companies.
But is that from the same company that will be doing the resurfacing? Because would you get a discount if you did that at the same time you did the resurfacing?
I don't think so, because really the resurfacing will be one technology with one set of equipment and materials. The new courts will be everything from grading to just initial asphalt, and the companies I talked to didn't indicate that would be the case. I think they're 2 standalone jobs. I do want to note that I think we would be eligible potentially for a USTA grant, as you've talked about before, and I've researched that could pay up to about half of that.
They'll pay half of it, because right now, I believe tennis is the only sport where they have to, if the boys and girls are gonna practice at the same time, somebody's gotta go off campus to practice. I wanna keep all of our kids together if we can, so that's why it's important to me too. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, that was the other thing. I just wanted to say, I wanted to turn your attention to that second part beyond the chart that includes other identified needs. We've pulled off some estimates from previous facility studies. I did have updated information on the tennis court cost, the auditorium improvements. The company doing that work has all the drawings now uploaded. They are moving forward with design, and I think by August we will have an idea of an estimate of cost as well as this kind of scope of work that we could move forward on there. And then I think one kind of mystery item on here that we just are trying to get our heads around how to figure out are the canopies at our 2 campus high schools that provide some protection from rain, but also leak a lot. Drainage doesn't work correctly. They mildew and need painting frequently. And they're concrete and heavy and just very difficult to figure out what to do with. So we're going to be trying to find the right person the right firm to take a look at those and advise us, can we fix them, make them more functional, or do we need to take them out and replace them with something else? What makes sense to do? And we just don't have an idea of that. Well, we're looking and trying to address that. I know that's a frustration on those campuses, and has been for a long time, so.
Ms. Hairston?
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Well, I know this is not gonna be apparent how much Boonesboro is on my mind, but I do have another question about other identified needs. So, under this category, again, helping me to understand this, are we looking at further down the road, we're talking future needs? Okay, so what are we talking, 2-3 years from now?
I think that's what the board really needs to decide. Looking
Okay.
at the amount of money at the bottom of those columns to
Yeah.
see how much money we think may be available.
All right,
If you all feel like one or more of those options fits with the available money and is a priority, you tell us and we'll start to work on planning and moving forward with getting a firmer,
okay.
estimate and plan.
So my next question is, earlier you said that certainly Boonesboro could be included in the next year, summer, or whatever, but yet I don't see Boonesboro listed here.
Well, the HVAC system is the fourth item on the chart, BNES HVAC, listed for the FY '23
Am
year.
I missing it?
Second column.
Right at the very top, near the top of the chart. There are HVAC systems on.
Fourth one down.
Okay, all right, that settles it for me. Thank you so much. I don't have any more questions for Dr. Dumas.
Any other questions for Dr. Lewis? Mr. Hill? Yeah.
This is a general question around, are we getting another 13 million? Is that what I'm hearing, or was that?
We have 3 CARES Act packages. CARES, I'll say 1, 2, and 3, or ESSER 1, 2, and 3. The first one was about 1.2 million, which I budgeted into next year. The second one was about a little over 5 million, and then the ESSER 3 is the 12 million. So all those have to be spent in a certain timeline. The 1 and 2, 1 has to be spent before 2, but 3 can be spent concurrently. Of ESSER 3, I was in a webinar today with Dr. Woodford, getting data on that. Certain amounts of that money have to be set aside for learning loss and
I'm sorry, for what loss?
learning loss.
Learning loss.
So, instructional type things. Some can be for HVAC and, air quality. But we do need to go through a process of soliciting public input, stakeholder input, teacher input, and things like that. So we have to go through a process and publicize our plan, which we're talking about how to go through that so we can have that done and develop that plan and submit that grant. We have to submit a plan to the state and they have to approve that. So we're working through that.
So we don't have the 13 or the 12 million.
It's been allocated to us. We have to apply the grant, we have to apply the plan, the state has to bless that, then we can go forward.
So is that 12 million grant or whatever, is it part of?
Some of it is. There may be some more that is moved from that 12 million. We are develop our instructional plans and what we want to do for learning loss first. Then the other will apply to HVAC. So actually what Dr. Dewis has built in for CARES Act might increase.
Okay.
But we have to, but
That's my question.
Yes.
So we could in fact move Boonesboro into much sooner based on those dollars.
Oh, the dollars are available, we could do that. It's a matter of the engineering and when can we get it done and bid. And so those dollars are available to us to go forward pretty
But
quickly.
for us to allocate the dollars for that, it could well be before 23.
Yes, sir, we can move forward with those.
That was my question.
And for example, if you look at the yellow in the middle of the blue at the bottom, you'll see probably $9 million embedded of CARES money, and that's out of the 5 plus the 12. So out of the 17, we've got 9 million penciled in here for these types of projects. And so more, like as Mayor has said, more may be available. So those controls at Liberty and JF, for example, might, if they, that might become something that could be addressed, or other types of, we're taking care of a lot of our carpet sanitizing with, vinyl tile and those sorts of things. So we've got all of that in here that needs to be, those are the kinds of things that we'll tweak as we go forward.
Any capital expenditure that we develop in the plan of the last one has to be submitted to the state and they have to okay any expenditure that's capital related. So you have to say, how does it deal with the COVID and air quality and what you're trying to do for the school? For instance, you can't go do a roof. It's not dealing with air quality.
We can't go build a gym at BPS for 1.8.
Construction projects are, it's a reach for construction projects. That's what I heard on there. Some people are trying, you have to say it's going to help during the COVID crisis. So if you're building a construction project that's gonna be done 2 or 3 years from now, they're gonna say, wait a minute, that's beyond.
Okay.
So there's, with construction, it's very specific and we have to have pre-approval.
But it would allow us to shift dollars that we have allocated for some of this HVAC or whatever. We could cover that with CARES money, which would then free up our.
Correct. And for instance, the Boonesboro project in the following year is with CARES Act money.
Okay.
So we're gonna use that. There may be additional CARES Act money we need to use for infrastructure, for air quality and things that will qualify. We gotta finish building out our instructional plan, make sure we get input from stakeholders before we can finalize that. But we've put quite a bit in here that it'd be hard to spend 12 million all on learning loss. There are some infrastructure things we need to do, and the state knows that, and the federal government knows that too, so. That plan will be coming to you shortly.
Okay, Dr. Mealy, hang on, so any other?
Yeah.
Good. All right, Ms. Kirby and then Dr. Mealy.
I just have and it could just be something that I've overlooked and I've forgotten from month to month. But I was looking through the individual line items and I'm seeing carpet replacement and all that. And then there's a line item for school board office roofing and windows at $150,000. But what about the renovations that are going on over here now? Is there a line item for that, or just out of curiosity, how much that's costing?
We've been able to replace some carpet and do some painting here, and a couple other things with existing operational funds. It's not reached that level to be listed there.
Okay.
Good.
Done a lot of that
Mhm,
work
that's good.
in-house.
Okay, Dr. Mealy.
Yeah, this is just another question I'm gonna put to Dr. Dees and Mr. Hagler. You know, we have the Denton River High School and Liberty High School auditorium improvement, and, when I was touring with, Dr. Bergen, he had asked a question that, you know, got me thinking too. He said, you know, those auditoriums are used as classrooms. So is there a possibility of using some money to renovate them, because they are in fact classrooms?
There's a possibility. That was a question that came up on the webinar today. However, the state would have to bless that. And I believe the ones they've okayed are ones where they're carving up the opportunity to create additional classrooms to create that separation or social distancing. So we'd have to put the plan before the state and see if we could do that. We have to see what the estimates are and to see if we even have enough money in there to do that. If that's a possibility, we may submit that to the state and see if that could be a possibility, but we'd have to get that blessing before we did it. So that is a possibility. I've thought about that, but it seemed like they were hesitant to say that they're being very careful on what they approve and what they don't, and that might be a little bit of a reach, but it doesn't prevent us from asking.
Okay, if the board is, you know, agrees, I mean, I would like to at least get that question asked. You might get lucky.
I think when we get the final scope of the work from the architect and engineer, and then have a cost estimate, we'll know exactly what's gonna be recommended to do, and then we'll know exactly what we can ask. And that should be really soon, in a matter of a couple months.
And I believe in a couple months, or by the fall, we'll know our final plan for the final grant, which we have to solicit information for. And then we may be able to build more money in for CIP. So we're in the works on that and making sure that we take care of all the instructional needs and then any infrastructure needs after that. So we're working through that plan. That last one, we have till 2024, I believe, to spend the money. So that's money that can be spent in next year's budget and the following year's budget on instructional things if we need it.
Any final questions? Thank you, and I look forward to seeing what creative solutions y'all might have for the awnings at Stanton River and Liberty. Nothing says mid-60s like those awnings that we.
Just don't run into one. Yeah, don't run into one. They're not gonna move.
May or may not have happened when I was there.
It's fun to play dodge the walls of rain though, when it's
Yes.
raining. And through those
Yes.
waterfalls between them.
All right, information items, code of conduct, student code of conduct update, Dr. Dewis.
Yes, sir. We've updated the draft code of conduct for information tonight and approval next month in board docs. There are really very few changes, really only minor wording differences from the current year's document. We had no call from administrators to make big changes, no direction from the state to make changes that we had not already made. We did a pretty big update of this 2 years ago after receiving lots of training and information from the Department of Education. Of course, we made a big revision last year as well in one part of the document, and this year really very few recommendations are here. So I'm happy to answer any questions about it generally, but really there are no big changes to announce or to propose tonight.
Any questions? So I presume we will see this again next month.
You can, and certainly in the time in between, it's a long document. If there are any questions, feel free to send them my way and we'll be sure to answer them.
Great, thank you. Is there a marked up copy that indicates if there were any changes, what those changes are, or a document that just lists any changes that we could be on the lookout for?
This year.
Or is it absolutely no changes?
This year, that document there were a few grammatical issues that I found just as I carefully reread it this time around. I'm not even sure a marked up copy would tell you much. It's that few.
Okay, great. All right, well, we will review this and take action on it at our June meeting then. All right, speaking of changes, Ms. Sexton, got some policies for us, huh?
Yeah, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I have a question for the board about a policy. So I wanted to know if I could ask that before I began about the informational part.
Sure.
I've had a few staff members tell me that regulations don't have to be approved by the board, which that's true, as action items. But my understanding from the policy that not me, that you approved in March from me, which is policy adoption, BFC. I just want to confirm my understanding is correct. Like, I think that it means that I am to present them to you for information, just as I do policies. And then if you have any regulations that you want to do action or vote on, then you would tell me to bring that back at the next board meeting as an action item. Otherwise, to me, I'm interpreting it that I put it on for information and then next board meeting it just comes off. So it wouldn't be on there for action if it's a regulation, because we're responsible for coming up with the process in which how we will implement the policy. I'm just making sure that
I mean,
that's correct.
that seems to be the way the policy is, we approved it as written, so unless.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure how it was done before me, so I was just making sure that I was following it properly. Okay, so now I have 20 policies and 5 regulations for information. And I'm sorry that there are big piles like this, but we're kind of behind on our policies from past years, and then COVID came and other things took precedence. So you can find those in the draft section under the policies drop down. As usual, the majority reflect updates to code or policy changes as recommended by the Virginia School Board Association, and there are a few that were changes by staff, which is indicated in the summary. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer or direct to the appropriate person.
Any questions on the 20-ish policies that Ms. Sexton brought to us tonight? If not, we'll be taking action on these next month, and so if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to staff throughout the month for more help on that. Thank you, ma'am. See you next month. All right, title grants, Dr. Woodford.
So tonight, we present the Title I Part A, the Title II Part A, the Title III Part A, and the Title IV Part A applications for the 21-22 school year. And I would first like to just say a big thank you to Dr. Diane Eisenhower and Mrs. Sherry Weiss, who worked on these with only about a little over a week and a half notice from the DOE to try to get these to Dr. Calvert and I, which if you've ever done one of these grants, they're fairly complicated. So Dr. Calvert and I and Dr. Miller will do our best to answer questions that you may have about each of these grants. These are federal appropriation grants. We get them every year. And they're being brought for information tonight, and they'll be brought back next month for approval because the applications have to be approved by the board and the superintendent and the board chair and submitted prior to the June 30th of each school year for us to have our funds allocated to us. And I've just described what each of these grants does for us. Title I is for our 8 Title I schools, for our highest poverty schools to supplement their instruction. The Title II provides funding for professional development, tuition assistance, and some division support salaries. Title III focuses on our limited English proficient or EL children. And Title IV Part A focuses on improving student academic achievement, offering a well-rounded education, improving school conditions, and improving the use of technology and digital literacy for our students. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have tonight, or if you want to take a little more time to read through them and email questions, we'll be happy to answer over the next 4 weeks before the next board meeting.
Great. Any questions tonight? Okay. Great.
Hallelujah.
Well, on that note then. So,
It's not fair.
Dr. Woodford
I
wants.
emailed my question.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mealy. I'll get back to you next week.
You don't have to rush.
So please email Dr. Woodford so she has some questions to answer over the next month.
I'm gonna let Dr. Francis do it since he needs some.
I don't like my answers.
Oh, that's great. All right, so at this point, we will go to matters from the board. So we started on this side last month, so let's start on this side this month with Dr. Hicks.
Well, I'd just like to thank Dr. Rogers for doing an outstanding job in her interim superintendent position. She's carried us through the end of our pandemic instruction and done a magnificent job. Thank you. That's all.
Ms. Hairston.
Well, I certainly want to echo the same sentiments that Dr. Hicks has said regarding Dr. Rogers. You've just done a fabulous job. You haven't missed a beat. We've been blessed to have you serve as the interim superintendent. And we've got your number. Should we need to contact you. On May the 5th, I chaired the Laurel School Board meeting. And at that time, we talked about and approved the budget for the 21-22 school year. There will be a reduction in 2 teaching positions at that school. And also they're gonna have their graduation on the 27th, but we don't have any students that will be graduating from Laurel. In fact, we only have 1 there. And I also, on that same day, that was a busy day for me, I went to the Susie G. Gibson school event that they held there with the First Lady Northern visiting. for Teacher Appreciation. It was an honor for me to be among many of the alumni and listening to their stories that they shared with the First Lady. I also want to just thank the staff, Susie G. Gibson, Mr. Doss, Principal Doss, and his staff. They just did a fabulous job. I mean, from the groundwork and the things that they had done, the sign is just beautiful. I can tell you that the community is so proud. So for each of you here with the senior staff, thank you for your efforts and your hard work too. It's such a beautiful thing to see the collaboration among the community. So I'm very, very proud and was honored to be a part of that event. I also just want to thank the nurses. Wow, what a year it's been. And we couldn't have done it without them. Their perseverance, the support that they gave to everyone is just outstanding. So, and a big shout out to all of them, just very proud of them. And to the supervisor, Patricia Knox, thank you for all of your hard work as well. I'm looking forward to attending our high school graduation on the 29th. I'm so happy that our students are going to have the opportunity to participate in a graduation. And also, there's a high school parade, grad parade, that I'm really excited about that's coming up too on the 27th. So looking forward to being a part of all of those activities as well. And I just want to take a moment to just wish all of the staff, everyone, teachers, administrators, bus drivers, all of them. I just want to say thank you for all of your hard work, your perseverance, your everything that you've done to weather this school year. And you've done it with just excellence. And I hope that the last few weeks of school or days, we're almost getting down to days, is just a really smooth one for you all. So thank you again. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Mealy.
Thank you. First, thank you so much for letting me participate remotely. I just really appreciate it. I have a couple of things. I too want to thank Dr. Rogers. You've been a blessing. Your professionalism is just so noteworthy. I want to thank you for caring, to me, and I'm sure all the others too, so deeply about our students, our staff, and our community. It was so obvious that this was more than just a 6-month job for you. You dove in as I hoped you would, and I think educators do, head first and let me see what I can do while I'm here to make everybody's life a little better. So I really appreciate you coming out of retirement. You did such an excellent job with addressing our concerns as a board, both as a board and individually, and parent referrals and in such a timely manner, and always with dignity and the utmost caring for our community. So I really just can't say enough except thank you for everything, and really I wish you'd come out of retirement because I think the board would hire you someplace. We'd find a place for you. I also want to thank our families and our staff and our students and our community for getting to the end of this unusual journey. I think this is going to be a year that's a bar, and whenever anything happens, I think many of us will look back and say, well, it wasn't as bad as 2021. So I feel like we can do anything at this point, and I just want to, I know it was so difficult for all of us, every single person in the country and around the world. It's just a very difficult year, but thankfully, I personally see light at the end of the tunnel, and I just don't even know how our staff and our community and our students did what they did. It was nothing short of, a miracle, really. And I don't think we can say thank you enough for that. I also want to give a shout out to the nurses. I really know what to say to you all and to Mrs. Knox. We couldn't have gone through this, without you. You were our go-to people and the people who helped us negotiate some difficult times. And just please know that, you were very, very appreciated, as were all of the volunteers and the sheriff's department and other places that helped our community. So just thank you. I'd also like to say that, I was at the G. Gibson, facility when our First Lady was there, with, Mrs. Harrison, and I just have to echo what she said. The school looks just fabulous. If you haven't been there and you haven't seen for many years coming down that main sidewalk, there were those two patches of kind of just dirt, and they have just put in timbers and rocks and plants, and they built a little patio around the flagpole, the sign, as Ms. Harrison said, was just beautiful. I spoke to so many of the staff there during our time that we spent there, and they were just so excited about the changes that had come, and the camaraderie with just making the school look better. So it was just a really wonderful day, and I've had a First Lady come to my school, and it is really quite an honor to have that. So congratulations to the G for all of that. I think it's just great. I do have one thing that I hope I can turn over either to Dr. Rogers or maybe Dr. Dewitt. Somehow my phone number is the phone number for the Bedford County School Board office. I myself don't know where they're getting it from, but I get hundreds of calls. Just asking if this is the Bedford County School Board. So if it's on the webpage someplace, if somebody could just kind of figure out where that is. I just get lots of people.
What's your extension?
I used to say I was a school board member, but then they started telling me all the problems that I really couldn't do anything about. So now I'm just giving them the number, and well, why are we calling you? I don't know where it is, but they're getting it someplace. So if somebody could find that out, I would really love it. And then I do have one little complaint. And that is that I am really, since I earned my doctorate, Virginia Tech, the year I earned it, and I graduated with Michelle Morgan who's out at Sam River, and they, Virginia Tech changed the requirements, and we were not allowed to wear the tutor hat, the doctoral beanie. So I was so excited that I was going to get to wear it, except now we're not wearing anything down. So, I mean, I'm never gonna get to wear that hat, I earned it. I may just wear it at the beach, I don't know. So, that's all I had, but thank you again for letting me, participate remotely, and, the rest of you have just a great ending to this very, very difficult year.
Great, thank you, we're glad you could participate tonight. Ms. Kirby.
I want to know whether it was Miss Hairston or Dr. Mealy that snuck in my house last night and read my notes, because that doesn't sound exactly like you guys. If anybody looks at social media, you've seen all week or the month of Teacher Appreciation Week, Administrative Assistant Recognition, Nurse Appreciation Week, Law Enforcement Appreciation Week, School Nutrition Appreciation. I want everyone to know that I appreciate everything everybody does all year long, not just 1 week of the year, and it takes a tribe to make the schools run every day. But most importantly, I want to thank the parents for entrusting us to educate and take care of their children. I know from a parent's standpoint, sometimes you hear things and you wonder how safe your kids are, but deep down, I know my kids are safe and I know they are getting a quality education. So I want to thank everyone for that. The graduation parade, I want to say kudos to his parents. They're stepping up and organizing that, and I think it's wonderful that we're including all 3 high schools. It's not just one getting recognition. It was a big hit last year, and I'm glad to see the tradition continue. Dr. Rogers, to echo everyone else, thank you. I'm sure it wasn't easy stepping in and bridging the gap between the old and the new administration, but you did it wonderfully. Thank you very much. And we're looking forward to Dr. Bergen starting June 1. And the last thing, I would like to congratulate Matt Usselton for being Bedford County Public Schools Teacher of the Year. That's it.
Mr. Leamy.
Dr. Rogers, right person, right place, right time. You have performed admirably, and I can't thank you enough for fighting a tough fight. You stepped in during a very difficult time in the school administration's history, and you just you drilled the landing. So thank you very much, and we wish you the best in all your future endeavors. Dr. Francis, I hope that they task you completely for your remaining time here. Get our money's worth out of you, and BB's gain is our loss. And tell all my buds over there that Leamy says hello. And I just want to read something, a news item that caught my eye today. People who are fully vaccinated against coronavirus no longer need to wear masks while indoors or outdoors or physical distance in either large or small gatherings. And this is from the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, CDC Director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, during a White House COVID-19 briefing today. And I look forward to our governor to expeditiously modify his directives accordingly. That's all I got.
Amen to that. Couple things. Congratulations to the 21 seniors who are student athletes who signed at JF yesterday to play college sports. Congratulations to the 2021 Class 4A cross-country state champions. JF Boys Cross Country won that last weekend, so kudos to them. Shout out to Cavalier Theater and a successful showing of SpongeBob. I did not get to see it, but I've heard nothing but rave reviews and know that there were several sold-out shows, so I'm sure they did not disappoint. 11 days, I think, was the number quoted tonight. So congratulations to all BCPS staff, teachers, everybody that makes it happen. Thank all of you. And I hope you do get some rest this summer, which I know not everybody gets the summer off. So I did want to mention something for transparency. Tonight I was questioning Dr. Woodford and Mr. Hagler regarding payments around students and Gov School, virtual, CVCC, being very transparent. I have 2 students that are JF students who are also CVCC students, hence my questioning. That's not the only reason, because again, I do truly feel that all students should be treated the same, but that's why I had information around CVCC, so being very transparent on that, so I wanted to mention that. I didn't mention it last meeting because we were really in the middle of it. Dr. Bergen, Dr. Rogers, Dr. Dewis, and myself toured the Forest schools back in April. Thought that was very successful. Wanted to comment on Dr. Bergen's way of really going in, getting involved, talking with everyone, shaking hands or fist bumps, elbow bumps, whatever, for you people who need to hear that. But got down on the student level, really got engaged and talked with everyone. So I was really impressed. And then each principal at those schools got about 20 to 30 minutes one-on-one time. So I thought that was very important. So Dr. Rogers, I'm not going to go through the whole spiel, but thank you very much. I do appreciate the job that you've done. and the relationships that you have built with all 7 of us. And so I do say thank you. I'm looking forward to graduation day on May 29th. Thank goodness it's in person and it's at Liberty University, Williams Stadium, so looking forward to that. Shout out to Susie G. Gibson Automotive. If you haven't checked that program out, you should. It is an awesome place to do business with and to see what they are doing. They're teaching those kids some really cool things. While I was there, I did take the opportunity to speak with some of our learners that were in the garage, and it was unanimous. All, in all capital letters, are very excited about 5 days a week next year. They were junior students, and so I just asked the general question, and there was no question. They were all ready to be back in. And last thing that I wanted to say was thank you to the parents who have stepped in where we legally could not, and are providing all 3 of our high schools proms, not proms, whatever you want to call it. That's important for our students. And so I do want to say thank you to all of those parents who are stepping up and doing that. So that's all for me.
Great, thank you. Well, like Mr. Hill, I accompanied Dr. Bergen last month on visits to Stanton River Middle School, Stanton River High School, Manita Elementary, and Huddleston Elementary. And Dr. Rogers was with us on some, and Dr. Woodford and others. Mr. Edwards even joined us for the Stanton River tours. Dr. Mealy and I visited the Stanton Rivers, and Dr. Hicks and I visited Huddleston together as well. And it was a lot of fun seeing our incoming superintendent interacting with the kids. And I don't want to let any secrets out, but he had a dance party with kindergartners, and he was playing basketball in the gym with some of the elementary kids. So you could definitely tell he is an elementary educator at heart. So I'm excited to see how things go when he is here officially full-time starting on June 1st. And I've really enjoyed getting to work with Dr. Bergen. You too, I'm coming to you later. But getting to work with Dr. Bergen during this transition, and I think he's going to be a fantastic leader for our school division. Looking forward to him starting. I did attend SpongeBob at JF, or I should probably say half of SpongeBob at JF. It started raining, so they canceled the second half during intermission, and I did not get to go back to find out what happened if they were able to save the town from the volcano. So I've been assured that they did, but I haven't actually seen it, so I can't confirm that. But great work there for the cast and crew, and to Mr. and Ms. White and Deshae Glover and their whole team for finding ways to keep theater going throughout this, and looking forward to catching the spring musicals at Liberty and Stanton River later this month. But also like to thank our board for participating in our board training / retreat last Friday with Virginia School Boards Association. I thought it was a good conversation about roles of school board, roles of superintendent. We started working on our county's first ever board superintendent agreement. So we will be scheduling a follow-up with Carrie Wilson from VSBA. We just have to nail down some final dates, and there have been some changes in that, so stay tuned to emails from Ms. Johnson as we get closer to being able to find some dates that work and go from there. But I am excited about what that document can do for us as a board, help us function more efficiently, and really help support our new superintendent in the work that he has to do as well. As everyone has said, thanks to our teachers and nurses, nutrition workers, bus drivers, everyone that has gone the extra mile and then some this year to make in-person learning happen again. When many school divisions in our state couldn't, we didn't hesitate for a moment. We found a way to make it happen. And so everyone definitely deserves a huge pat on the back for that. And certainly we could not have done this without our custodians and all of the work that they do, keeping the schools cleaning multiple times a day. You were truly the unsung heroes of the 2021 school year. So all of you, thank you. Teacher of the Year, Mr. Usselton, congratulations. I know we had some great candidates from all of our schools, and I knew all three of the finalists, and they were all great choices, but I'm excited for Mr. Usselton, and I know he will be great. And fun fact, all three finalists had a tie to Stanton River, so just throwing that out there. Roanoke Valley Governor's School lost a board member recently, Dr. Mark Chiglinski from Salem. Dr. Chiglinski was one of the nicest people I've ever had the privilege of working with. If you know him, you know exactly what I mean. He's definitely been a mentor to me and over the years that we've worked together, and I will personally miss seeing him at our board meetings and being able to call him in between meetings and just kind of decompress. So to the Chiklinski family and everyone in the city of Salem, I am most sorry for your loss, and I certainly feel it and sympathize with you greatly. Finally, Dr. Rogers. You know, a long time ago when I studied Latin at Stanton River High School, Mrs. Butler taught us about the ancient Roman figure Cincinnatus. And Cincinnatus was a former leader in Rome who retired and went back to his farm and was farming when an enemy attacked the city. And Cincinnatus was called back to active duty to defend the city. He was given the title of dictator, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but that was the term for like the military leader that had all the power at the time. And he could have served in that role for, I think it was like 6 months, but as soon as the enemy was defeated, he relinquished power and went back home to his farm. So Dr. Rogers, we called you out of retirement, literally from your farm, to come back in and support our school system during a time of transition. And as everyone has said, you've done so admirably. I have enjoyed working with you throughout the last 6 months and getting to, you know, I've heard of the legend of Julie Rogers, but actually getting to work with you and see you up close, it has been truly a pleasure. And I don't know what other transitions have been like in the past, but I think the way that you have worked with Dr. Bergen in getting him up to speed and getting him ready to go on day one, it has been very smooth, and I know that he is going to be better prepared to start his job because of everything that you have done to help him and the work that you did keeping our school division on the right track over the last 6 months. So to you, thank you. I hope you enjoy going back to the farm and not getting like frantic calls and texts from me, like, are you free? Can you talk right now? So thank you for everything. Best wishes. I know we'll be talking again before the end of the month, but I just wanted to publicly thank you for everything and wish you all the best in the future. All right. On that note, Dr. Rogers, were there any board consensus items that you think we need to, you heard that we need to revisit next month?
I don't think we discussed.
Or the rest of us need to revisit next month? You can watch from home on YouTube. All right. Well, hearing none then, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. So moved. All right, there's a motion by Mr. Hill. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Leamy. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. See you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good night.